everyone, and welcome to this edition of Parade's Concierge Desk. Here at Parade, we specialise in delivering class-defining event concierge services, and our North Star is to offer a frictionless experience for our clients and our guests. Our obsession is guest experience, and we're fascinated by how other businesses and brands use experience to build connections with their clients and customers. Concierge Desk is our opportunity for us to speak to others that feel about experience the same way we do, and to share some thoughts with our network. Throughout this series, we've been speaking to a number of fascinating people, hearing their unique take on what guest experience means for their business. And I'm absolutely thrilled today to be joined by Alexander Hallett. Alex is Associate Director and Head of the Fine Interiors Department at Sworders Fine Art Auctioneers. And they specialise in the valuation and sale of stylish and exceptional collections. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Really happy to have you with us today. And speaking of stylish and exceptional collections, I love your background. It looks
Thank you
fantastic.
very much.
Hopefully we'll hear a little bit more about that. But first of all, I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about Sworders, and perhaps a little bit about your friend.
Yeah, of course. Well, first and foremost, what a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I think you kind of rounded it off quite succinctly there, but I'm Alex. I have been in the auction industry for the best part of a decade now, and 7 of those years I've spent at Sworders. We're an auction house based in Essex, with our headquarters here in the village of Stansted, Mount Fitchett, which is a gorgeous 11th century village, rather eclipsed now by the airport, but we've been doing our thing here much longer than it has. We've also got a flagship office in the West End of London, as well as a valuation office in Hertford. We specialise in the sale by auction, obviously, of all sorts of fine art, antiques, furniture, paintings, being modern and old master, sculpture, Asian art, wine, jewellery, coins, cars, watches, a bit of everything, really.
Wow. A lot, but you specialise in fine art.
Yeah, so my role as Associate Director, which is a relatively recent appointment, focuses mainly on our client service strategy and the development of that, which is obviously a fantastically important thing, as you know more than anybody. And I also run one of our sale departments, one of our kind of flagship sale departments, which is called Fine Interiors, which is the sort of top end, more traditional side of what we offer. So country house furniture and sculpture and carpets and all those sorts of things that you'd find in a home, basically, but particularly geared towards exceptional collections and really stylish interiors. And what we like to do is mix traditional and modern, and demonstrate that actually antiques aren't all old, kind of brown, boring, fusty things, that when you pick and choose in a really inspired way, actually you can create something incredibly cool with a lot of heritage and also a lot of style.
Amazing. So in your world, and again, we always ask this question, but in your world, how do you interpret the phrase guest experience? What does it mean to you, and what's the importance of it in your business? And I'm going to weave in another question at the same time because they're linked. How has that changed? You've been doing business for many years. How has that kind of guest experience piece changed over the last kind of 5-10 years?
Yeah, well, I think to sort of your first point, obviously guest experience is hugely important. And I suppose the way that we would kind of define the guest or the client experience and the service that we offer goes into 2 categories. Obviously, we are acting for both buyers and sellers, our sort of vendors. So first, you've got to try and work out what those 2 different kind of diverse groups, what their motivations are and what their drivers are, before you can then focus on them as individuals and what really kind of makes them tick. So particularly the service that we provide to vendors, say, might be a kind of protracted, could be a year, 2 years, if we're selling a large collection over various sales. Whereas a buyer obviously is looking to, comes to us at relatively short notice when we're doing our sales. They might be coming back to us again and again, but they're obviously looking at the service that we provide in an entirely different way to a vendor. And I think particularly, both of them probably similar motives generally, in that they're hoping that, I suppose, for vendors, that we can achieve as much money as possible for them, and for buyers, that we can try and help them achieve what they want to for as little money as possible. But ultimately, both of those groups of people kind of need that trust and that confidence in us as a business and the service that we provide them, and therefore the experience, the way in which we treat them, and the service that we offer them is really important in building that trust and that confidence that we are the right people for them either to be entrusting their possessions to, or that these people who are buying can do so with as much confidence as possible, which ultimately means that they're willing to spend much more than they would if they didn't really trust the process.
And that need for, so beyond the service, so delivering the service is kind of the baseline, the guest, customer, client experience that you add onto that. How has that changed over the years since, I guess, Sworders started doing business, perhaps since you joined 10 years ago? How have you seen that kind of develop, the reason for needing to bring that kind of experience level, and how you interpret that into the business?
Yeah, well, again, it's the auction industry is a very well established trade, and Sworders have been operating since 1782 in various guises. So I think certainly before my time, into the sort of late part of the 20th century and into the early 21st century, I think there's this idea of sort of caveat emptor, which is buyer beware, which is effectively you turn up, you see the thing you want to buy, you decide whether you want to buy it, and you buy it. And then if you get it home and it's broken, well, tough cheese really, because you've seen it, you've made that decision. Whereas certainly for buyers now, particularly in the modern marketplace, and particularly with the sort of more we grow and more we sort of develop as a company, the better quality clients are coming to us. And clients these days expect more of a kind of retail experience akin to the kind of the shopping that they might do online or in store. So we have got to try and effectively match that service, and basically, if somebody doesn't like something, or something, if they feel we've got something wrong, they would expect that we would rectify the situation, which of course we are more than happy to do. And I think, actually, sometimes you see when something goes wrong, you see an opportunity to really make something right and surpass some expectations. So I'd say it's changed massively. It's become much more of a kind of a global business, certainly, and much more of a high quality service that we want to and have to provide, certainly to our buyers, and then to our vendors. The marketplace for auctions has become an awful lot more competitive recently, certainly in the last 5 years post-COVID, particularly with the likes of Christie's and Sotheby's, who are kind of continue to go stratospheric, and all their focus is on the £50 million Picassos, etc. So they don't perhaps have as much time as they might like for those people who have got slightly more modest, in inverted commas, collections. And particularly with our exposure in London, we are finding that there is a huge group of clients who used to buy and sell with Sotheby's and Christie's who now can't. So they're expecting a comparable service from us, and they also need to trust that we can achieve as good prices effectively as these kind of top London sale rooms. So it's all of that really, and obviously the online world is so much about presentation, so much about marketing. So we've really had to kind of raise our game there. So again, it's that kind of that confidence that comes from both sides that we are the people who are right and knowledgeable enough to be helping the purchase and sale of these items.
So it's really fascinating because you've got different types of customer. You've got your your buyers and your vendors,
Yeah.
and you've got clients who come into the space physically and clients who come in virtually, and you've got your kind of clients that you've had for a long time, and then you've got your new clients who are coming in having experienced another brand, and you're trying to, with all of these clients, I guess, build an emotional connection, build a connection between themselves and you. So how do you approach that? How can you kind of build those connections with all of those different categories of clients in all of those different settings for all of those different purposes? And how do you build the Sworders brand, I guess, essence into those transactions?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a great question. I think and perfectly kind of outlines just how broad a scope of service that we have to provide to people. And so you have to be many different things to many different people, but actually making sure that we are promoting our brand and what makes us special at the heart of all of that. And I think you say emotional connection. I think that is such an important thing, particularly from the sales side and the vendor side of things, because the items that we sell more often than not are so bound up with history and memory and emotion for a lot of these people, particularly in the ways that the majority of our vendors might come to us is through perhaps divorce, debt, or death. So, for example, if we are selling a collection of somebody who has very sadly passed, then those particular objects, that collection, the contents of that home might be particularly bound up in kind of the memory of that person. So you've got to demonstrate certainly compassion. You've got to demonstrate that you're going to treat those objects with the right reverence, with the right sophistication, and that's something that's really important. And I think being passionate and knowledgeable about that is fundamental to those things, making sure that, again, those people trust that you are the right people to handle those pieces, not only to achieve as much money as possible, but almost to do justice to that person who is sadly no longer with us. So it can be a really difficult time, and often it is very soon after that person has died. So it can be really raw for those people. So you've sort of got to be a friend and a confidant as much as you are effectively somebody selling some goods for them. And then for the buyers, obviously, you've got to kind of demonstrate that knowledge, that expertise to, again, build that confidence. But with all these different people that are coming from different places, as you say, the different kind of avenues, the people who might come to us in person regularly, you've got to kind of demonstrate that you are there, you're presenting the right things to make them want to come and see you. But then also you've got to explain, discuss these things and show that you know what you're talking about effectively. And underpinning all of that is just trying to be nice, helpful, communicative, and trying to make the process as transparent as possible. Obviously, you've got buyers coming to us to purchase items on behalf, from somebody, but that they've never seen, and we don't, for the most part, divulge that information. And then vice versa, you've got vendors coming and we're connecting them with somebody possibly on the other side of the world. So you've got to try and show both of those sets of people that this is how the process is going to work, and actually this is how we're going to manage this, and this is what is going to happen ultimately. And you've got to kind of guide people step by step through that.
And that kind of that expertise, that guidance, all of those kind of very all of those elements, I think, are easier to communicate in a face-to-face or a kind of a person-to-person setting. How do you translate that into the digital world, which I assume is a big chunk of, certainly from a buyer point of view, a big chunk of the business? How can you kind of create that same level of authenticity, I guess, of the brand in a digital setting?
Yeah, so like you say, it's probably three-quarters of our clients we
Oh,
will
wow.
never meet in person, we will never see, they will never come into contact physically with, say, a catalogue that we produce. So we've got to make sure that we are imbuing as much of that transaction with the real sort of sense of who we are and where we come from. And I think that sense of place is something that is really important, certainly to me, and something that we try and put out there as much as possible, because you've got all these high net worth, ultra high net worth clients from around the globe who don't know who we are. They might be buying from dozens of different auction houses around the world, lots of different retailers. So you've got to try and offer that point of difference and demonstrate what makes us who we are. And something that I love doing, particularly with our gifting, for example, and some of our kind of experiences and moments, is using local producers, say, for sending a bottle of wine or a box of chocolates or something. And we're really privileged to be working with some amazing producers in the Essex area. So that's really helpful to be able to, say, send someone a bottle if they've sold something incredibly well or bought something for an awful lot of money, or but for any other reason. And a bottle of wine is always a nice touch afterwards, and to be able to say that this is one of our favourite local producers just adds that slight point of difference, I think,
Yeah.
which I think is really lovely. And again, it's picking up the phone, it's trying to get out and see these people as much as possible, even if it's getting on a plane or getting on a train to another country. Then that can often make so much of a difference in establishing that emotional connection, to demonstrate to those people that we are the right people to sort of win their business.
Amazing. And through building those connections, can you give an example of when you having put the effort into building that connection has then led to something that was rather unexpected?
Yeah, I mean, something that has really stuck with me is a a moment a few years ago. I was working in our London gallery in Cecil Court, which is just off Leicester Square, and we got a call from a family who were going through the exact circumstance that I mentioned earlier, that their father slash husband had very sadly passed away, and they needed to disperse the contents of his flat, which was in Warwick Square in Pimlico. So a lovely exclusive location. And I was very excited. I'd seen the photos on the internet and the particulars of sale, and it looked like there were some amazing things in there. So yeah, was really keen to go and see them. Got there and sort of immediately was ushered into effectively a broom cupboard to have a look at old cushions and sort of cups and saucers that weren't particularly valuable, unfortunately. Having walked past all these amazing rooms full of paintings and furniture and sculpture and things like that. But I, sort of took it on the chin and thought, well, we are where we are. Let's make the best of it. So I gave them a copy of one of our previous catalogues to have a look at while I was doing the work. They'd never come across us before, so it was a kind of a new engagement. And a few minutes later, the daughter kind of walked into the room and said, "We've had a look through your catalogue. We absolutely love it. And we've just got a few more things. I wonder if you wouldn't mind coming and having a look." And obviously, I was then invited to take a view on the contents of this entire flat, which was clearly destined for one of these top London auction houses and probably some of our other competitors. And it was beautifully laid out and with things purchased from around the world, from Italy, from China. There were old master pictures from the UK, amazing portraits and things like that. So, I mean, it would have been hard not to be excited and not to be passionate about all of these things. And they were all sort of put together in a really interesting way and done with a fantastic eye. And I just looked at everything and talked quite passionately about all of them, because it just so happened that they were all amazing and I loved them. And the man's widow, particularly, I think, took a real shine to the enthusiasm and the passion that I was showing, because her late husband had put the collection together with exactly that amount of passion, enthusiasm, and love for those things. And so we then did a sale proposal and won the consignment wholesale, which was really gratifying because it demonstrated that actually if you can show that love, that passion that kind of matched the love and passion with which that collection was established, then you form that emotional connection with those people, particularly when the collector isn't around anymore. So we got the collection for sale. We presented it in one of our fine interiors catalogues with photos of the objects in situ in this amazing flat in southwest London. We presented a bit of a biography about the man and about his life and his passions and where he found these things. And it all sold fantastically well and sold well above expectation, which was brilliant. And they were delighted, we were delighted. But the nicest thing was that after the sale and once we'd kind of concluded our relationship effectively, I had a letter from the family just saying, you know, thanks, Alex, we're really pleased with how much everything made, of course, but particularly the way that you kind of took us through that process, the way that you presented these objects and presented the life of our father, husband, served as a memento to him and to his life. And you at Sworders turned what was a really traumatic, awful experience for us into a real moment of joy and something to remember this man by. So that was, I think, probably one of the proudest moments of my career to date. And I think demonstrates so clearly how that emotional connection and really kind of making that bond with people can make things happen and create unexpected things.
And that's such a great story because clearly you're not only creating bonds with the people that you deal with, but you're also creating bonds with the objects, with and the fact that you had that passion and excitement about the pieces meant that they were sold in, you know, displayed in the catalogue, sold in such a way that they also sold above expectation. And I think that kind of that authenticity is something that we talk about a lot with clients, and that authenticity of experience. And yeah, clearly that's a big part of your business as well.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned the authenticity between us and the objects, and you can't fake that. So certainly in our fine interiors sales, my colleagues and I do try and fill those sales full of things that we would own and we love, because then it becomes so much more easy to sell them and talk about them authentically if you like them yourself and don't have to kind of gild the lily for people to try and get them sold.
That's it. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for you to just finish off by telling us a little bit about this piece next to you.
Oh, yes. Well, speaking of objects that I would happily own if I had massive change in financial circumstances. The sculpture behind me is a 3rd century Roman bust, which we're working on for a sale later this year. It's come from an amazing collection in the UK, and we think it's been in the family ever since it was brought back from Italy on the Grand Tour in the late 18th century. And it's just one of those things that it's such a captivating object. I personally, one of my big passions is ancient art and antiquities. It looks fantastic. It's got amazing heritage, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get a really good price for it on the day.
Fantastic. Well, it's a gorgeous thing, that's for sure. I probably won't be bidding, not this time.
I'm sure we can tempt you.
Thanks so much, Alex. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been fantastic talking to you. And
no, it's been lovely to talk to you too.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you.